What did you think of the 1 hour of Rampage?
Well, they again put a hitch in their get-along. Speaking of hitches, this was 2 programs. This is the real program, and then this is whatever they're doing. I don't understand. And in the middle, actually, besides, you know who I liked, and you know who I'm going to talk about, but there was somebody else in here that was exactly perfect with what they needed to do that you will probably be surprised that I mention this. So we'll talk about that in a second. However, this is the AEW Rampage for October 8th of the year of our Lord 2021, right? And again, as soon as they go on the air, they've got a nice crowd and a nice building, and they got the pyro and etc. But suddenly you hear Excrement's voice as he is the announcer who does the show billboard at the top of the program. Tonight, we're going to see blah, 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 blah. Because he sounds constipated. The words hurt coming out. There is no flow nor a tone of authority or assertiveness. It's like he's reading these bullet points as fast as he can. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and destroy the formatting here. The first match was CM Punk versus Daniel Garcia. I know everybody said, holy shit, it's come to this now. It's Ric Flair versus Vernon Deaton.
No, see, I'm not thinking that about Daniel Garcia. I know that's what you think.
No. But no, in all honesty, though, it is the reason why Punk was wrestling on this program is because the ratings have been going down when Punk don't wrestle on a program. But the problem, besides the formatting, which we're going to talk about in a second, I understand what they're trying to do. They're trying to get some eyeballs on this show. They need to have an excuse for CM Punk to be wrestling on this show, but they can't give away, dream matches on Friday Night Rampage. And they're trying to serve the master of the ratings and etc. But at least if you're gonna do it, format the fucking thing right. I understand and am with you why, and he did a perfect job of it, which we'll discuss, why this needed to happen. But this was the formatting. You come up on the program with the crowd pans and the pyro and the stage and the announcer billboarding tonight, it's Friday night, you know what that means, blah, blah, blah. And instead of going out of that, like Mussolini and Vaseline, instead of going to that, you go to a goddamn 3-way split screen with Mark Henry, CM Punk, and Daniel Garcia with 2.0. And you drop most of the crowd audio out. You could still hear them slightly reacting to it, which is actually even worse because you got them to be up for the show open, and instead of going right into that fucking entrance, because remember, it's 10 o'clock on fucking Wednesday night when they're at least, or after when they're taping this. So you had them up for the open. You could have segued right into like Mussolini, and you could have kept them fucking what?
You know that's not the name of the song, right?
I'm aware of that.
Okay.
You could have segued right into that, and you could have kept them up. And then instead of having the split screen where the canned comments, Punk said what he needed to say. So did the other guy, but they were canned comments that now the TV audience has seen and heard. He's seen CM Punk, and they've heard him talk. The audience in the arena, because they did Dynamite there before, has seen him come out once and has heard him talk live, and now has seen him on the screen right before he's going to come out again. You fucking lost your momentum. You slowed all the energy down. The split screen is normally done for the main event. You can argue this is the main event. Well, if they did it for that one, then they also did it for the real main event on this show, which stunk. And besides that, if you're doing it for this just because it's the main event, then you're doing that because that's what you normally do, and who gives a fuck? The point is, boom, from announcer billboarding with the crowd pans, the people are up in the pyro like Mussolini. Here comes fucking Punk. Now the people are seeing Punk in the building. For the goddamn people in the building, I don't think it makes a shit whether they hear from 2.0 or Daniel Garcia, but if it was so important for the building, you could have played that in a break so that the match would be set up before you're on television. Then, when Punk is 2/3 of the way to the ring, then you fly in the heels saying they're 30 seconds worth of shit in a box while you're still watching Punk crowd surf and do whatever the fuck he wants to do. Well, he's coming out for a match, so he's not going to crowd surf, but he's got his game face on. Then you fly the heel box out, and if you want to Punk to give them a little validation and bring them up in the fans' eyes, the heels he's about to work with, by talking about them, then let him grab the microphone and say, okay, now Garcia and your big bad ass and those two fucking discount nasty boys, bring your fucking asses on out here, and I'm going to walk the dog on all three of you. And then the people there that are, now they're waking up at 10:15. Oh, shit, yeah. And then here comes the heels entrance. That, to me, would keep your fucking momentum up. Because, again, in addition to format issues, this is another effect of doing two shows in the same night, and you've just seen everything that anybody can do on Dynamite, and now it's after 10 o'clock in the building, and they've been sitting there for 3 or 4 hours, and they've got to watch Rampage. But the idea of this match was obviously to bolster the ratings, and I understand what they're doing, and I've, can sympathize, been in the situation, but you can't make too many withdrawals from your Goodwill account at the bank before you cheapen the occasion, and it's, instead of, Punk's wrestling on TV, it's, Punk's wrestling on TV again? That's what the line you got to walk. But what do you think of my formatting?
I mean, you're right in the sense that you're right, but you're wrong in the sense that I treat this like it's the Friday night AEW show, and unfortunately, that's, I think, the way a lot of the audience is treating it. And I didn't think too much of it. I also don't know what they're going to do with Mark Henry if they don't have him doing these segments.
Well, I didn't say he couldn't do any segments ever. I said, don't, in that situation, don't show your big star to the people at home and to the people in the building before you actually show him to the people in person and keep your energy level going, and etc. Just reformat that particular situation. But it would have flowed better, and it would have probably helped keep the people up because, let's face it, the finish of this match was never in doubt. They were, I'm sure, glad to see CM Punk wrestle, but it's not like they were worried about his welfare in this. But then again, they had a tremendous... I've got to go back because we got so many new listeners. I've explained this before. I'm going to try again. Everybody these days has the best match possible they can with their opponent, no matter who their opponent is or how their opponent has been presented to the audience they're in front of. It's like guys sit down and say, okay, I am a main event guy in all of the independent promotions, and I travel around, and I'm usually in a main event wrestling with other guys that are fairly well known, whatever the case. And this other guy that I'm sitting down with to talk about our match, he wrestles in the first match of most independent promotions and generally doesn't win. But boy, he's a heck of a wrestler. So we're going to have the best match that we can possibly have out in front of those people tonight, which is stupid. Instead of having a match that befits the way that the individuals in that match are presented to the public. And if a main event guy and a guy who usually goes over and a guy who's usually on top goes out and has the most ball-buster competitive match in the world with a guy who never wins and who's never featured in a main event and who is a great athlete or wrestler, but for whatever reason, his size or his look or his whatever the fuck, it doesn't happen. he ain't over, he don't get pushed, then that main event person doing that is an idiot. But there was always the need for guys that were a main event level guy to have a match for ratings or for time or for just because that's what you had with a guy that wasn't presented in that respect. Then that doesn't mean that you have to beat that guy up and chew him up and spit him out and beat him in 5 minutes. It just means you need to make whatever you are presenting make fucking sense. And the way that Punk did this and got 10 minutes or however long they went with a guy who is a good athlete, is a recent acquisition of the roster, has not been in any pay-per-view main events or held any titles or whatever, but he's got 2 heel stooges with him, and he apparently is pretty good at listening. And so therefore, Punk had a match that a main event star would have with this guy. It made sense, and it still made him look better because it's the best match that Daniel Garcia has ever had a chance to have on this program. He didn't get to do everything he's ever learned, but it's the best, most coherent, most logical match he's ever had with the biggest star he's ever been in the ring with. So that's the point I'm trying to make, is that for at least Punk understands he doesn't need to go out there and get this guy over by having this guy kick his ass in a completely preposterous fashion that nobody believes for the first 5 minutes, because that would stink. They had a match. They started with a finger lock. It's been so long. Welcome back, old friend. They did a little wrestling and struggled into a 1 tackle spot. Very sweet. And they weren't running off and leaving the people at 10 whatever at night also in the building. Because there's nothing worse than if they'd been going 100 miles an hour and people been sitting there going, They did the little spot where Garcia chopped Punk and then did the taunt in his face, and Punk no-sold it, and with perfect timing just slapped shit out of Garcia. Boom. And then he gets pops from the people with 2 scoop slams. And then Garcia foils the 3rd one. And then, amazingly, the heel stooges at ringside interfered and pulled Punk's leg for the heat spot, and they wrapped Punk's leg around the post. Now, the main event star that's not really been taking this guy completely seriously and or is more pissed off at his obnoxiousness than has been wounded. Suddenly, the helpers at ringside have wrapped his leg around the fucking ring post, and he's got a reason to sell for this fucking guy in a believable fashion. Imagine that. So they go to the break with that. When they come back, again, they'd paced the first segment perfectly because Punk clearly controlled everything and wasn't being tested. But then, after Garcia mostly gets his ass kicked for 5 minutes, the Stooges have to help him. Now Punk's leg is hurt. This guy may have a chance in story, even though all the fans that are so smart they can sit down on an ice cream cone, tell you what flavor it is, in the building know Punk's not going to get beat. They're telling the proper story. Punk is doing the right thing here. And Garcia works on the leg, and Punk sells his ass off. And did you see Garcia got not only a good pop, but an oh shit pop from the fans there with the old sit drop on the leg, because nobody does it anymore. And it looked like they thought he'd broken Punk's leg. I wish that Garcia knew the spinning toe hold. If he'd have busted that out, people would probably hit the ring. Anyway, Punk fights back. Garcia hits chop block. I've never seen somebody actually work a match on AEW television like this, where they're actually working. Garcia misses a drop kick in the corner. Punk has time to recover. Garcia goes for the single leg. Punk hits him with the short knee lift, which he sold well so the people reacted to it. They could see. They stood and traded, it wasn't the you hit me and I'll hit you. It's they're doing the 1-2-1-2. It's still maybe a bit overdone at this point. I love the classic 1-2-1-2 on a real bloodbath. But Punk was able to fight back, still selling the leg, hit that one-footed drop kick, neck breaker, a knee lift. Somehow Garcia got under him, got an angle slam, which I thought was a little too much for Garcia there. But Punk came back with a clothesline, got a nice 2 count. They got the Punk chant going, signaled for the go to sleep. And then Garcia rolled him into the sharpshooter, but Punk got the ropes and kicked Garcia off into one of the heels and then knocked the other one off and basically got a spot in where he could crossbody all 3 of the heels on the floor coming off the top rope, which, okay, I appreciate that he can still do it, and also that he wanted to show the people he could still do it, and it was built to where it was in the right spot in the match. I don't know if as valuable as he is to their company, that I would want him jumping off the top rope to the floor in matches that weren't main events on pay-per-views, etc., but still it was done safely. So he throws the guy back in the ring, hits a clothesline, nice pile driver, put the fucking anaconda vice on him and tapped him out. So bottom line, yes, he went 15 minutes with an underneath guy, but it all made sense. It looked good. And he had another clinic of how to have a match. I just don't want them to devalue the specialness of him wrestling on the show against anybody by doing it too much. What'd you think?
I don't disagree at all with your last point, and I think that's important. But with that said, I enjoyed the match. I really enjoyed it. I've liked Daniel Garcia since he first showed up, which was my first exposure to him. Yeah, he's skinny, and he's also young, and hopefully he'll gain some weight over the years, and you never know. I mean, Zack Sabre Jr. is still as skinny as he was when he first debuted.
Here's $50. Gain some weight, okay?
But I like Daniel Garcia.
Dollars the hard way? I'm fucking with you today.
But I like Daniel Garcia, and I think he looks like an athlete in there. He may be skinny, but he looks like he's struggling. He looks like he's competing. And whatever it is, I mean, the Bootleg Nasty Boys 2.0, that one guy, I guess his name is Matt Lee, the bigger one, I find him great. He's always just cartoonish, but not too cartoonish. Like, he seems like he could be an obnoxious French Canadian, as opposed to just like some guy acting like a wacky guy.
And actually the thing is, because he kind of acts like the Nasty Boys aren't too far off from the way they are in person on television. So this could be in the same vein. He could kind of have a little bit of that to him naturally.
But I like this. I don't disagree with your point that you shouldn't waste Punk matches on Friday nights, let alone on TV, let alone against an opponent who has not really been pushed hard yet. But I also know Punk, from everything we've heard, wants to work with a lot of the younger guys, and I'm going to assume this was a match he requested. He either asked for this match or it was suggested to him, and he said, you know what, that's something I would be interested in doing.
Well, but hold on now, Cowboy. We don't want to give the impression that he's like, hey, let me wrestle on Friday night. I'm sure.
I'm not saying that.
Well, okay, I just want to clarify. He's clearing the opponents. I'm sure he's saying, okay, yes. So if Tony Khan goes to Punk, can you have a match on Friday night? Who would you like to wrestle with? And Punk says, well, give me such and such. I can see that, yes. But I don't want to give the impression that, he's saying, I need to wrestle every week.
No, and I don't think he's doing that, and I certainly don't think he's going, hey, you know what, put me on Friday. I don't think he's doing that, but I thought this was good, and I like Punk wearing the pants as opposed to the trunks. I think the pants look good.
He does look a little more, the trunks just put me off a bit for whatever reason. It was odd to me. But anyway, so yeah, that's the thing, and I'm not knocking Daniel Garcia because he was serious, and he did do a good job here, but it's just well,
if you don't mind me just saying, are you basically saying your problem with this match is the same it would be if it was CM Punk against
anybody else?
Anybody else who is mid-card or below right now?
Well, anybody else, because as I said at the start, you can't give away the dream matches on Friday nights. That would be crazy. It's just the fact that he's back and suddenly he's wrestling. He's wrestling often before he gets to the names that everybody wants to see. And you have to do see. A lot of people would say, "Well, Cornette, Jesus Christ, you say the guy has to come in and get over." FTR should have come in and got 6 weeks in a row of wins on TV. MJF should have come in and got 6 weeks of wins against anybody on TV because they needed to wrestle to improve their standing in the community with the fans. I don't know, unless Punk somehow saved goddamn, the fucking St. Jude's Children's Hospital from burning down. I don't see how he could have got more popular than he was at the first night he was in. So now you're making withdrawals out of the Goodwill account. Every time the people see him wrestling someone, he's having a good match, but it doesn't keep it special that he's wrestling on TV to make it a big ratings bonanza. So that's what I'm saying. That's why Bruno didn't wrestle on television for years and years when he was the champion. That's why Hogan didn't wrestle on TV for years and years when he was the champion. That was the thought process. Don't keep this as special as you can. That's all I'm saying. So it's not Daniel Garcia, it's anybody.